one that I took was the plus sign, or negative sign. And so I was sitting there and I saw that you had to wait for it to appear. I was waiting and waiting. And, but it wasn't that long. I was waiting for a very short period of time. I don't recall how long, but I just remember I started seeing a faint plus coming. And I was like, no, that must be like, it's so faint. That must not be real. But it just kept getting darker and darker till it was just clear that it was a plus sign. But then I just didn't. I thought to myself, this can't be right. I couldn't believe that it was correct. So I went ahead and took another test. And so I took the pregnant, not pregnant. And that was pretty close to after I took the test, initiated taking the test, that it showed up pregnant. So I didn't let Katie know that I was testing early. I just was like, it'll show, and let me see what it says. I was just really anxious getting ready for work and decided to test. So after I took my 2 at-home pregnancy tests, I decided to call in and follow the doctor's directives to call in to provide that you had a positive pregnancy test. And so when I called and alerted them of that, they ended up letting me know that I needed to go in and I needed to have my pregnancy levels, see where that number was. And so I made an appointment, and Katie was at work. She was kind of like trying to save her time in advance of having a kid if we were that fortunate, or if we had to go into adopting, take off time for that. So I took care of that myself because I knew on short notice with her profession she wouldn't be able to get off. Went to the appointment, and that night what I decided to do was surprise her in some kind of way. So how I did it is, both of our birthdays are in December. So this was about a week before Katie's birthday. So I just got I think some tissue paper. Do you remember what I got?
Yeah, it was tissue paper in a box.
I got like tissue paper and I think a box, and I can't remember. I don't think it was wrapped.
It was wrapped.
Like wrapped with wrapping paper, or
no,
just wrapped with the. It was wrapped with the tissue paper, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the tissue paper that you like put in the bags, I had that. That's all I had, and then I wrapped that around the pregnancy test and gave that to her. And so I recorded audio, which I was gonna insert, but it just wasn't good enough audio. It didn't come out the way I wanted it to. So I decided to record this for you all. But we have that audio still. And so essentially what I did is just let her know, hey, your birthday's coming up and I have a surprise for you. So I just want you to like sit down and open this gift. And so really it's just the audio of her opening it up. Do you remember, babe? Do you want to chime in on, do you recall me giving this to you? And then do you recall what you were thinking the gift may be, or did you have any idea?
Yeah, no, I had no idea what it would be. I was more surprised than ever because my birthday wasn't for like a week or so. So kind of was out of the norm. But I remember kind of thinking, okay, this is kind of odd. And then you told me to open it. And so when I opened it, it was more of a, what could this be in this type of box, and with the tissue paper and everything kind of threw me off. But when I saw it, it was more of a shock type feeling.
Yes.
And I didn't really react because I was scared out of my mind, like, this is real.
Yeah, that's what I noticed too, was there's also a lot of empty air because Katie's literally just like shocked into silence. And we talked about just what I experienced at the appointment. I told her how I took the test and how I took 2, and calling into the doctor, I just gave her all the details after the initial shock. Then the next day we got my results, and my levels were going up, my pregnancy hormones, that's what it was. checking the pregnancy hormone, and it kept going up and climbing as the doctor expected it to. And then at that point, they set out my appointment, I believe, for the next 2 to 3 weeks to come out. What I remember is it was going to be the day, I believe, after Christmas, was going to be my first appointment back at our center where I had been given the IUI. After the shock settled and we got that news the next day that the levels were going up, because Katie did ask me a question of, like, is there any way that this is a false, like, positive? Because I actually thought, that's why I took 2 tests. I just, when you see it, I didn't really expect it to take that long. What they had told us, for anyone who's either had fertility issues or needed to utilize IUI due to being in a same-sex relationship, or just choosing to be a single parent and choosing to become a parent on your own, which I think that's hats off to all of you if that's you, because that is, I think, really brave, and it's great to not wait for things to happen. Take the bull by the horns and make your life the way you want it to be, instead of waiting for certain pieces to fall in place. Just whatever works for each of us. I'm happy for all of us when we're able to get what it is we want and desire in life. So anyway, the shock wore off, and then the excitement took over. And so 2 days later, we had this place in the city where we are from. And so it's the place where we had several date nights. It's the place where several of our family members have gotten married, place where Kenny and I got married. And they had every so often they had just maybe like a 4-course meal where you just pay a flat rate, and you get your courses and you can get wine, and it was really special. Shout out to, what is her name? Shout out to Chelsea. Shout out to Chelsea, because she was the wedding coordinator there and worked with several of my family members, myself and Katie, and she really did a great job making our wedding special, but she made it special with us coming out there. So I remember that night they created a special menu for us, and they put a menu that had our picture from our wedding, and Katie didn't even know they were doing that. Or did you ask them to do that? No. Okay. Yeah, I think Katie didn't know they were doing that, so they did that. So she took us to a nice dinner, and then I had been wanting to go to the Nutcracker, to go to some ballet or something. It just something I wanted to do, and it's not Katie's jam, but she surprised me with getting us tickets to go that night. And it wasn't what I expected, and it probably was where we went, but I was so grateful for it. But it just wasn't. I got it out of my system, and she got it out of her system. She was glad that I didn't want to take her to that again. So in any event, I have some pictures that you'll see next that'll show exactly what I just detailed. It'll show like the pregnancy test and some of the things that we did, the opera, the dinner. Those are pictures that are inserted next. So I'm just gonna close out by turning it over to Katie to see if she has any like final thoughts or anything she can remember about anything she felt, either when she opened up the test or in the days once we knew the hormone levels were going up and it was real.
I think one thing that I was thinking is about the whole, if it was real or not real, or if it was what's it called, false positive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't want to get your hopes up, because if it is a false positive, you get excited for no reason. So it was one of those shocked but yet careful to get excited.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be like, oh, this is exciting, and then, oh, wait, no.
And get disappointed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I talked about that too in the previous, I think in the same video or the one before part 1. This is for part 2. Part 1, I talked about how Katie was like just letting herself feel her feelings and get excited. So she was, I think, more disappointed the first time. So I want to add, that's my last item I want to add, is that we were told that it can take anywhere from, on average, like 3 to I think 6 times for it to take for you to actually become pregnant. And so what we ended up doing is we ordered 5 vows. We thought, well, from 3 to 6, let's do 5, because once we got a fifth one, I believe there was like free storage, because you had to have it stored somewhere. You can't just have all the vials, you have to keep it somewhere, a medical facility, so that they can store it for you. So we thought it doesn't quite get us to the 6, but if we get the 5, we probably won't have to go back again. Then we were also told that if you want to have this particular donor, that's another story that maybe we can talk about another day. If Katie will want to come back, is to talk about how we did that whole process, the IUI, but also the picking of donor. That's all that's a huge story. That's got a lot of layers, and it's a really, I think it's so unique, and it's a story that I think we can share maybe potentially some other time, or I'll share it. But we wanted to at least make sure that we had what we needed, so that if it didn't take however many times, that we didn't run out, because they had told us that sometimes that you'll get a couple of vials, and we actually, if anybody else watched the Real L Word, me and I used to watch that show, and there was a couple who, I don't know if they were going through IUI or IVF or both, but I remember Casey and I think Corey. So Casey and Corey, that was kind of one of my first introductions to this process. And I recall either them mentioning something about that, if I'm not like getting this wrong and mixing it up with another story, because we used to watch YouTubers as well. We heard somewhere, and I think it might have been on that show, that they didn't get enough vowels, and then they ran out. So then you have to switch and go elsewhere once they run out. So we didn't want to have that happen. We wanted to avoid that, and we were able to do that. So when it comes to the shock, because it took the second time and we had 5, I had no thought process of that it was going to take. So I'm right there with Katie. When it happened, there was a lot of shock for me too, because I just couldn't believe it. But then we were feeling so blessed, feeling so grateful. We got the biggest news of our lives with that test result. And yeah, it was a super special time, and I'm happy to share this, and I'm with those who are going to see it, but I'm especially happy to keep these videos. Thanks, babe, for joining me. So I just want to thank my wife again, Katie, for joining me today. She wasn't sure she was going to. She wanted to think about it, but I'm so glad she did, so that we could have these memories for a lifetime, and that will live on after us. And I want to close out with what I normally do, is asking you, how are you doing? How are y'all doing out there? And I want you to really take a moment to think about how you're doing. And I want to remind you to feel your feelings, and that wherever you are in the grief process is okay. As long as you're feeling your feelings, then you're still moving forward. And I also want to challenge you to take about 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes, to do something that brings you joy and makes you feel like the awesome person that you are. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.